Hey there. Thanks for stopping by MBRR Media. I am TC, and this is my platform. Host, originator, creator, craft services. Let's see, what else am I? Well, no, I'm not show producer. We'll get to show producer in a minute. Director, screenwriter. I don't write scripts, so I'm not a screenwriter per se. I'm not the researcher. I have a wonderful researcher who does her work pro bono. So very thankful for that. But hey, yeah, I'm TC. This is MBRR Media. This is another Drive Time Dialectic. I want to give a big shout out to my show producers, Tav, the Angry Vet from YouTube, has just done a massive amount of support for the channel. I want to give a shout out to IMAV from over on Subscribestar. If you want to support the show and you don't want to do a channel membership or super chats, you can do a membership through Subscribestar. You just find Minnesota Black Robe Regiment on Subscribestar and pick a level of support there. The people that come in at the top tiers of support get show producer credits by name. And then I have one who has been ultimate top tier, and she wishes to remain anonymous, and so we're going to let her remain anonymous. So I have 3 show producer folks, and I'm very thankful for all of them. I'm also incredibly thankful for all of the channel members, no matter what level they're at. They help keep things going for me. And I want to say, hey, Lady Jen, I want to say thank you to all of the subscribers who tune in on a regular basis. And while you're on your way in or passing through, hit that thumbs up. Hit that like, tap this. If you're watching on your phone, you can double tap the screen. But other than that, you can hit that thumbs up and share it out. Share it with your friends. I think you guys are going to enjoy this today. I've been thinking about it a lot since I did my audit of sorts on Monday. And due to a ton of posts that I have been making on social media, in particular over on Facebook, I've been getting some pushback on some of my distrust for government, my dislike for government, and I'm here to tell you, I stand firmly by the title of this stream. If you hate government, you don't hate government enough. I mean that. You do not hate government enough, folks. You just cannot hate government with the proper level of anger. And I'm not talking about violent anger. I'm just mean, like, you just have to understand that no matter which side of the Overton window that you find yourself on, whatever side of the political spectrum, left versus right, Republican versus Democrat, conservative versus leftist, or conservative versus liberal, which I hate, by the way. I hate that the left has co-opted the phrase liberal from the classical liberals. By the way, our founding fathers were all in the classical liberal camp. They were libertarians to a man. Every one of them was a classical liberal. But yeah, anyway, besides all that, no matter which side of the Overton window you find yourself on, you're going to find yourself in a position where you hate government depending on who's in office. Your distrust for government is going to grow, wax, or wane, really depending on who's in office. And so we'll get to the second part of the title, but I want to emphasize the reality that government is not something to be trusted. Government is not something to be loved. It's not something to be adored. It's not something to be respected. It's not something to be held in high regard. government should always be held at arm's length, at the closest, and it should be held in a view of very severe doubt. You should, at the very best, have just this high level of doubt, severe doubt of anything that government tells you at any level. Federal government to state government to the county government to the city government. ABA, thanks for being here. Love to see you coming in. So, but yeah, there's absolutely no reason why you should just automatically give any trust to any level of government. And when I say that you should not give any trust to any level of government, I mean that's even when your person is in charge. Okay? Are you following? When your person, when your guy or your gal holds office, you should not just automatically trust government. And the reality of that really is kind of has been explicitly on display for us since 2020. And I really thought it was going to be, I had this hope, this deep-seated internal and even to some degree an external hope that people were going to be not woke but awakened. If you were paying attention, I was hoping that people could see just how in on it both sides of the political two-party spectrum everybody is. You know, the Republicans and the Democrats are in on it together. They're in on the pulling the wool over our eyes, putting their thumbs on the scales, RICO statute level game that they're playing, which isn't a game, it is literally a attack on us, we the people. I was really hoping that people would start to really come alive, because I started to see people from both sides of the political spectrum kind of drop the facade of trusting government. But the problem is that we have these really short-term memories, folks, incredibly short-term memories. And as people kind of gain some semblance of normalcy in their lives after, the great, viral epidemic that we were told we were facing in 2020, people who I thought would start to question even Trump, people who had voted for him, really, ask some hard questions. Why is Fauci still in office? Why are we talking about expedited vaccines and whatnot? They felt right back to, well, he's our guy, so none of this is his fault. And the Dems, not to be outdone, said, well, none of this is our people's fault. This is all Trump's fault. And so everybody kind of quickly fell back into their trust of their guy, and then their own levels of hatred or adoration for government. And so we saw when George Floyd was killed and the riots broke out, we saw all of a sudden that Republican Trump supporter types who had begun to question government were calling on government to solve the riots. They were calling for martial law. They were calling for severe implementation of the use of force at a military level in major U.S. cities, and just absolutely trusted that nothing could go wrong there. And the Democrats were the same people who told us we needed to mask up, the same people who told us that we needed to stay home, or we didn't love our neighbors and we didn't love our family members and we didn't love the old people down the street. Those same people were now telling us we couldn't trust government. And they were talking about how much they hated government. And, 4 years of Biden, all of a sudden, those people were back in love with government because government was doing what they wanted, and the Republicans were back into hating government because government wasn't doing what they wanted them to do, and they just needed to get their guy in. See, and that's why I say you don't hate government enough. Seven Sacraments of Health. Thanks for tuning in. No long. So here's this reality that we live in. This reality that we have to deal with is that we've got I haven't even begun to make an actual argument yet, so I'm not straw manning anything. I don't know what you're getting at, but the reality that we have to deal with is that government is never on your side. It's not. You cannot name an aspect of government that we couldn't live without. Jen, I don't think they were being disrespectful. I just think they were misusing the straw man argument. Okay, so what would you like me to clarify, by the way? So, I'm not threatened by questions, but you made an accusation that I strawman something, so you need to actually ask the question so that I can answer it instead of making an assertion, because I'm pretty good at steel manning arguments, and not in the right because I understand them well. So go ahead and ask your question. Don't assert. But the reality is that what you see is that people tend to take up. What about LEOs? You just made what? Okay, LEOs. What about LEOs? What about law enforcement officers? No, I not that we do not trust government. What side? You don't trust law enforcement officers? Okay, so you say that people don't trust law enforcement officers, but they do trust government. Okay, so interesting point, and I think this fits in well. Are law enforcement officers not the arm of force for the government, especially at the municipal, county, and state level? Law enforcement officers are the government. They are part and parcel of the government. In fact, without law enforcement officers, government cannot do anything. Correct? Can government enforce any law? Can any branch of government? Can the legislature enforce a law? No, that's on the executive branch. Can the courts enforce laws? No, they don't enforce laws. They make decisions, they make rulings. So and the executives enforce laws, but the executive branch in and of itself cannot enforce law, whether it's the executive branch at the municipal level, at the county level, or the state level, and even at the federal level. The executive branch cannot enforce law without law enforcement officers. But we aren't making large demands for anarchy. I'm an anarcho-capitalist, so I am making a large demand for anarchy because I understand what anarchy is. Most people who use the word anarchy confuse anarchy with out-of-control rioting, and that's not anarchy. That is coercive violence. So, Bob said, so as wildlife rangers, should we hate them? Okay, first of all, not trusting an individual or trusting a career field within government is not the same as hating individuals. I do not hate any individual cops. I hate government. Big difference. And I hate the power that government has. Period. Thanks for asking the question. Some are more okay. So there are, of course, divisions. So there are, of course, divisions within the liberal to left. Well, there's a massive division between the liberals and the left, because liberals are not leftists. Classical liberals are not leftists. The left, as a whole, co-opted the phrase liberal to soften their leftist ideology, and the conservative right, supposedly conservative right, fell for the co-opting of the phrase liberal, classical liberal, in the condensing of it to liberal, to then use it as the phrase libtard, because the vast majority of conservatives don't know the difference between classical liberalism and what the leftists call being liberal today. In fact, the vast majority of supposed conservatives, traditionalists, and Republicans don't even know what it means to be conservative. They're almost all populist, and there's a massive difference between populism and conservatism. No, the liberalism of the Founding Fathers is classical. Yes, I said that at pretty much the very beginning of my commentary. All of the Founding Fathers were not, it wasn't liberalism, it was classical liberalism. And like I said, we've condensed it to just liberalism. So they weren't, liberalism and leftism have nothing in common at all, philosophically. And no, you don't have to apologize. I love the interactions. I don't know if I've seen you in the chat before, so I really appreciate you being here. I hope you will subscribe and stick around for other content. But so in answer to Bob's question about wildlife rangers, I see government as a monolithic entity made up of individuals who, in and of themselves, might be at some level, decent, good people. But they work for a monolithic entity, which is working in direct opposition to the good and the welfare of the people. The problem is we've allowed government to define what is the good and the welfare of the people. And we've therefore kind of adopted governmental definitions of what is good. We've adopted governmental definitions of what it means to have the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of life, the pursuit of liberty. And so when I speak of hating, you don't hate government enough, I'm not talking about the individuals who work within the framework of the bureaucracy of government. I'm talking about hating the entity, the monolithic entity of government, because of the danger that it poses to the natural rights of man. And you cannot name, there is no example on earth where government has not destroyed man's natural rights. You cannot name one. And when I say destroyed, I don't mean that they're gone. I just mean destroyed man's ability to actually exercise their natural rights without disgusting and egregious governmental interference. Oh, well, it depends on what you refer to and how you define capitalism. I use the phrase anarcho-capitalism just because people tend to understand capitalism a little bit more than when you say free market. But I'm actually, if I were going to use it in a way that people understood, I would say I'm an anarcho-free marketist. Because once again, the people say, really? Are you kidding me? I'm sorry. Most people today look at capitalism as what they see in the United States. And the United States has actually not really ever had a free market capitalism. The United States has been almost without fail exclusively a mercantilist economy. Almost without fail. I'm racking my brain right now to think of a time where there was not a mercantilist economy in the United States, and I can't think of one. I really can't. I cannot think of a time when it wasn't mercantilism. And for those who don't know what mercantilism is, it's not just you going down the mercantile and buying grain and baling twine and Horehound candy for 5 cents. I'm talking about actually, it's an entire economic system, and I reject mercantilism. I would take mercantilism for fascistic economic controls or socialist or communist economic controls by any stretch of the imagination. But along with the mercantilism of the United States today, we also have a form of what people have come to call crony capitalism, which is just really an exacerbation of mercantilism, and a lot of times it actually borders sits very close to actual fascism when it comes to how we reward corporations who do what the government or the supreme leader wants. So, well, the 7 sacraments of health, I'm just going to call you 7. The problem with neoliberalism is the same as the problem with neoconservatism. The neoconservatives were, hardcore Trotskyites. They all came out of Trotskyism, and of course, which was a communist philosophy that came out of the Bolshevik Revolution, and they're often, what we would refer to today as West Coast Straussians. And so, for a person to be a neoliberal is much like somebody to be a neocon. So we hear people refer to guys like Lindsey Graham and call him a neocon. He's not a neocon. Lindsey Graham is not a neocon. He's a center leftist. That's all he is. He's just a center leftist. And a lot of people who are neoliberals today are not actually liberal. They are kind of soft center, somewhat left-leaning types, and almost without fail, even within neoliberalism and neoconservatism, they're almost all interventionists. They're almost all absolute interventionists. So I don't use the term neocon unless I'm talking about somebody who's actually in the part of the original neocon movement, and I don't use the term neoliberalism. I use the terms classical liberal or libertarian if it's easier for people to understand. Left, calling the right conservatives at all is on the right that would fall into traditional conservatism. Absolutely. From the last of the Italian post-Mussolini economists. Yeah, you're typing as I talk, so I don't know how far back we're going. Yeah. So ultimately what we have is that people will claim, I hate government, or I'm for small government, or the smaller the government, the better, until their guy gets into power. And we've seen this in a very heavy-handed way with Trump. who, by the way, I voted for in 2020 and in 2024. I did. I just, uh-oh, am I buffering? It happens in this area where I'm at. Bear with me. Thank you, Bob, for letting me know. I'm seeing comments, so I don't know if I'm buffering for everyone or just you, Bob. Give me a chance to take a drink. But yeah, I voted for Trump, but it was more of a protest vote because I knew that my state would never elect a libertarian, and candidate for president in 2024 was atrocious. So yeah. And so as I was saying, the people who talk about, oh, I want smaller government, or I want, less of this, I want less funding, I want to cut taxes, I want to raise taxes, I want more government, I want more regulation, on and on and on. That vacillates. The vast majority of them, not all of them, some of the present company excluded, the vast majority of those people will, be all in favor of more regulation as long as it's regulation coming from their perspective. Thank you, Seven. I really appreciate that. I hope you'll give me a follow as well, or a sub, as we say here on. Got to be careful using a phrase like sub. It doesn't mean the same thing to some people as it does here. But yeah, might get a little buffering here again, guys. So I'll try and pay attention to that. The Trump people are all now on board with like authoritarianism. So Trump came out earlier this week and made an announcement that he was basically advising his command staff for the military to go to the most violent cities in the United States and use it as a training ground for warfighters, for the military. And they all came out and said, that's an amazing thing. We should have, absolutely, yes. That sounds great. All of his dyed-in-the-wool supporters, friends of mine that I euphemistically and affectionately refer to as Trump bots, they're all on board with it. They all love the idea of Trump telling the military to go into the U.S. cities and use them as training grounds. Well, yeah, there you are, Seven. That's, fair acknowledgement, and I really appreciate you being willing to acknowledge that. I watch the left. The left, they want to defund the police. Fair. They want to defund the police. And not all the left, but some people. But they also then want to turn around and use the police to police the people that they want policed. And that's what is selective slavery. The vast majority of people are very much okay with being enslaved selectively as long as the person that they're enslaved to is the person that they support. And that's a fair human trait. Better the evil we know than the evil we don't know, right? That's what a lot of people will say. And that's actually a lot of slaves in the antebellum South and in the antebellum North. The North had a huge slave population, by the way. There were still slave-holding states in the North at one time. Y'all know how I feel about Lincoln. But there were slaves who oftentimes were offered freedom. Because there were many conscientious Southerners who were part of the Confederacy who had come to hate slavery. Many, many, many Confederate states property owners hated slavery. And there are instances where they offered freedom to their slaves and said, look, we no longer want to see you as property. We no longer want to own you. You are free to go. We will. And they were like, no, just continue to feed us, continue to house us. It is safer here with you. We know who you are. We would much rather. And that's selective slavery. They weren't, they weren't asking to be paid. They were just asking to continue to live the life that they'd been living because they knew that life. They knew what was expected of them. They knew that their master would protect them. And yes, the slaves had few options economically. And so it was safer to remain in the state that they were in that enslaved state. And there are many on the left and many on the right who will only rebel against the slavery that they find themselves in today if the other side is in power. Because they don't know what the other side is going, what the other side is going to do, so they feel safe when it's their side that's in control. They'll not fight against the yoke of slavery that government puts on all of us. And that's the facts. Government puts a yoke of slavery on everyone. I've been telling people this for years. We have lauded Abraham Lincoln as this great emancipator, right? He's a great emancipator. Oh, just listen to the Emancipation Proclamation. Listen to his words as he was struggling over fighting the war with the South. Look at what he was doing. He was preserving the Union. He was protecting the Union. He was keeping us together for our own good. But ultimately, what ended up happening because of Lincoln's actions was not the freeing of all the slaves. It was the enslaving of all people to a strong central government. But to keep us enslaved, they have to keep us at each other's throats. They have to get us arguing about, well, your side believes this, or your side believes that, or your side does this, or your side does that. You people on the left, you're all a bunch of commie Marxist libtards, man. You're a baby-killing bastards, and we hate you, and we're going to do everything we can to keep you out of power and take your freedoms away. And the left is like, you Nazi-loving, fascistic bastards on the right, you want to take away our freedom of choice, and you want us to live these like puritanical Mormons or puritanical Christians, and we just don't want to live that way, and you just want to control us. And you know what? They do. I got news for you. The average person who votes for Republicans, the average person who votes for Donald Trump, does want to control you. They do want to use the force of government against you to make you live their moral life. But guess what? The vast majority of people who vote for the left also want to use the force of government to control you, to live their moral life. They do. They do. They absolutely do. And that, folks, is why you don't hate government enough. And that includes the institution of policing. That includes the Social Security Administration. That includes the Department of Education. That includes the Department of Commerce. That includes the FFA. That includes, you name it, just keep on going down the list. But in particular, and precisely, all of those things, all that enforcement, all of these things that about government that make our lives more difficult every day, and harder, are the fact that behind every law, behind every statute, behind every ordinance, behind every code, behind every policy, behind every executive order, lies like a lingering and shadowy figure in a darkened alley during the time of Jack the Ripper. Law enforcement waiting to spring on you to enforce the will of government on you, no matter who's in power. And that's the truth. See, here in Minnesota, we have a guy running for U.S. Senate. His name is Royce White. I've been incredibly hypercritical of Royce. And pushed on him over several things. And finally drew him out to the point where we could have I finally got him to make an appearance on the show when I was talking specifically about him. And, I said, look, there's probably a lot of things that we would agree on, Royce, but, there are other places where we strongly disagree. And, I'm never going to support him, but I saw something yesterday that he posted. He posted somebody else's video of him, and he was acting in a less than senatorial way, but he was counter-protesting as a mega, like ultra mega. He defines himself as ultra mega. I don't define him as ultra mega. He defines himself as ultra mega. He was counter-protesting leftists who were protesting a Republican event in Minnesota. I think it was in Wilmer. And at one point, a sheriff's deputy approached him and basically told him he needed to stop, that he was causing a disruption. And Royce stood his ground a little bit, but ultimately then after that, the deputy said, well, if you're going to continue to do this, you're going to have to go across the street away from their side of the street where they're protesting, or you're not going to be allowed to do this. And Royce capitulated. He capitulated to the officer, to the deputy, excuse me. And had he stood his ground and said, no, I'm having a peaceable assembly, and I'm counter-protesting people who are protesting. I am not a threat or a danger to anyone. I am not going to follow your directive to move across the street, even if it means you arrest me. I would have backed him up. I might have even considered voting for him. But because he capitulated to law enforcement, he displayed what it means when I say nothing that our philosophical opponents want can ever be done without the threat of force that government has through the existence of law enforcement. That's the only way that government can impose its will on us. That's it. Government cannot impose its will on us without the threat of force at the hands of law enforcement. No president, no mayor, no governor, no county board chair, no county commissioner, no legislator, no senator, no judge has the power or the ability to make you comply without first having the ability to dispatch someone with a gun and a badge to either take away your freedom or end your life. And the left and the right side of the political spectrum, as they define it themselves, love having that monopoly on force, that monopoly on violence. Oh, hey, 7. Exactly. Government has a monopoly on force that you are never going to have. And that is why the natural rights of man, as they're enshrined in the Bill of Rights in particular, are meant to give us the ability to resist government through various means and various stages and through various applications of the Bill of Rights, while we work to constrain government through the Constitution. So no, I don't think, as much as you say you hate government right now because Donald Trump's in power, or as much as you say you hate government when Joe Biden or somebody else is in power, you don't hate government enough. And you're choosing a very selective and willful slavery. And nothing is going to get better until you wake up to that reality. Really appreciate everybody tuning in that's been here in the comments, the interaction 7 especially from you and everybody else. I really appreciate all of that. I hope that you'll think about some of what I've said. Tune in. I've got at least one very big stream on Saturday. I'm going to be attending Blake Mosted's benefit, and I would encourage you to go check out the playlist about Blake Mosted and what happened to him back in April 9th. And then come back for the next shows that I do, whether it's a Drive Time Dialectic, Libertarian Lowdown, TC and Friend Monday Night Musings, any of those, or any of the other stuff that I put out. Really appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate thoughtful interactions, and I hope that you've enjoyed, been challenged, and been compelled to think. And until next time, fight for your freedom, it is yours. Fight for your liberty, it belongs to you. And sic semper tyrannis.